Last one.
All right, I will call our meeting to order. This is Monday, May 7th, 2018, Addison Central School District Board. And let's do a quick round of introductions. And why don't we begin at the far end down there? Lorraine, you now have to begin.
Lorraine Morse, Middlebury, ACSD.
Jory Jacobite.
Victoria Jetty.
Chris Eaton.
Peter Conlon.
Peter Burrow, Superintendent.
Peg Martin.
Perry Hansen. Chip Malcolm.
Savannah Daymory.
Mary Gill.
Vicki Bellis, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
The acoustics in here aren't that great. If you can't hear me, please just say, Peter, speak up. I got a cold coming on, so I may get you want to go quieter. What's that? Yes. Yes, why don't we do the audience as well?
Okay.
Bruce?
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Caitlin Steele, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Andrew Way, Bridgeport Kindergarten teacher.
Hi, I'm Megan Tresnick. I am Bridgeport first and second grade teacher. Kate Mortinger, Pre-K here at Bridgeport.
Thank you.
One more.
Oh, yes. Jen?
Jen Papiak, Principal at Bridgeport, and trying to be a tech person.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I assume you're all here for the presentation and there is no public comment? Thank you. Let's see. How about a recommendation, a motion to approve the minutes of April 16th?
So move.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Anybody want to add in any corrections?
I do. At the end, at other, I just don't know, I want to clarify the last thing where Steve was talking, and it's kind of not clear in the last line there. Medical bills are not being paid and some are going to collection agencies. I think it should be clarified that that's what Steve was saying, and not just a sentence on its own, that's what's...
Yes.
Can you repeat that to me?
Maybe I can, because I know exactly what you're talking about. So in the last sentence of the second paragraph of other, say, Steve reported that in some parts of the state, medical bills are not being paid, and some of those are being sent to collection agencies. It was not an ACSD specific comment.
Nor directive.
Nor directive. And Lorraine, do you have correction capability over there, or are you just noting it for Suzanne to correct it another time?
I am just using a blank piece of paper.
Okay, great.
Scribbling.
I also have a correction. That's just Judy's spelling of her name, and that she's from Ripton, not Cornwall. Turn that down to Lorraine. Anything else? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
All right.
I wasn't here, I should abstain.
Okay.
Just as reading them, so.
So 2 abstentions,
Anybody
and
else?
we've approved the minutes. Let's see here.
Goes without saying.
All right, do we have some bills to pay this time around?
Yeah, we have actually 3 weeks of bills. So I'll just go through those. On April 23rd, Suzanne and I reviewed the bills and director's orders, $116,439.29, and payroll-related $747.49, for a total of $117,186.78. On 4/30/18, Victoria and I reviewed the bills. Director's orders, $121,096.21, and payroll expenses, $815,155.64, for a total of $936,251.86. There was also a payment from the McGilton Fund for $16,320 relating to education for their environmental
whatever.
Chip, what was the date on that one, April?
That's April 30th. And then today, 5/7, again, Victoria and I reviewed them. Director's order, I have the sheet, so I'll send it over to you. Director's order is $172,771.17, and payroll expenses $336,683.88 for a total of $509,455.05. And I move that we approve the bills.
So Chip moves we approve the bills. Victoria, I'm sure, was about to second.
Yes. Second.
Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the bills are paid. All right. Well, I think at this point, the stage is now yours.
So we have 3 teachers here to share with you. Kate Moringer, our pre-K teacher, is going to talk a little bit about the field trip that pre-K 1-2 took the other day to Echo. Andrea is going to talk to you about Circus Smirkus, the artist in residence we had this year. And Megan's going to talk a little bit about her IB unit that she recently finished teaching. So I'm going to hand it over to them.
Jen, actually, before you do that, could you just give us a very quick kind of primer on Bridgeport School? How many kids? What's the grade configuration?
We have 70-ish. We just got a new family with 3, maybe 4 kids coming, because one is a pre-K kiddo. Pre-K through 6, we have a pre-K that is 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and we have a kindergarten, and then we have a combined 1-2, combined 3-4, and combined 5-6.
And what's the pre-K program? How many hours a week is that?
Currently, because it's changing for next year, 3-year-olds are here, correct me if I'm wrong. You like some help? Go ahead. She's the expert.
So pre-K 3 is here on Mondays and Tuesdays. They attend from 7:45 until 1 o'clock on Mondays, and then on Tuesday they're here from 7:45 until 2:30. So they're here all day on Tuesdays.
And extending that day on Tuesday was recent. That was a decision we made, us, and
After
the
February
families,
break.
after February break, based on student need.
And pre-K 4 attends Wednesday through Friday, all day, to 7:45 until 2:30. I have 8 kids in my pre-K 3 class. I also have 8 kids in my pre-K 4 class. 2 of my pre-K 3 kiddos come from Shoreham.
And next year, we're looking to grow the program a little bit. Our pre-K 4 kiddos will be here Monday through Friday for full days. And the pre-K 3 kiddos will have 2 sections, one group that comes Monday, Tuesday, and another group that comes Wednesday, Thursday. The goal being to try and maximize the number of kids within the district that we are seeing. We're giving preference to the current 3-year-olds that want to return as 4-year-olds. After that, preference is given to our Bridgeport residents, and then beyond that, it's other families within the district. Also looking at kiddos and having more intensive needs. So Kate and I are just sitting down and looking at the list of people that have expressed interest. There is not surprisingly more expressing interest than we are allowed to have per our licensing regs. So we just today met and went through the names. We're both taking 24 hours to think about it and make sure we're going about it as objectively and logically as possible. And then we're going to meet again tomorrow morning at 9 and finalize that list. So we will have a full program of 17 kids every single day with the exception of Friday, which will be just our 4-year-olds. And that's looking to be about 11 or 12 kids. And we will have a waiting list unless those families find something different between now and the fall. So it'll be a big change.
We're ready.
Anything else from me? Yes.
Are you going to be the only teacher for all this?
So I am the classroom teacher, but I have the most amazing paraprofessional, Bill Taylor, that is with me all day, every day. So it will be myself and him. And then lots of extra support. We're really fortunate that we get to participate in a lot of different specials, so the kids get to leave the classroom and go to library and go to music and go to PE. We eat here in the cafeteria together. So my colleagues step in during that time and help me get the kids through the lunch line, because it's really scary when they're 3-year-olds and they're carrying their plates and you see that food ready to fall on the floor. So we come together as a staff, and it will be an adjustment for us in the beginning of the year, but Jen has been really great about getting the schedule working ahead of time for next year, so we have all summer to plan and sit down and figure out what it's going to look like. So I think that we're in really good shape for next year. I do.
And the numbers that we can have is that's based on the space that we have. But it's also, I think if we went above 20, we would have to have an additional staff member. So the number we can have is based on the physical space we currently have and the staffing we currently have. And there might be some logistical pieces for next year with regard to fingerprinting and dealing with the 2 different agencies. Currently, we have sort of a set of people in the building that are fingerprinted both through the AOE and the CDD. And her pre-K licensing regs able to be alone with the kiddos. We might have to extend that a little bit next year in order to give Kate time to get to the restroom and stuff.
They are really great nappers. So I just have to make it until noon. Everybody takes a nap. No beverages.
I'll talk to you.
It's a great time. I love my little ones, and that's what I'm actually here to share with you guys. Am I up? Is it my turn? Okay.
Perfect timing.
Help you press the button.
No, I think I got it. Unless you want to be like my assistant.
Well, if you'd like help, I'm happy to help.
So starting last year, my kiddos and I went to the Echo Center. We were really fortunate that we had studied the monarch butterflies in the beginning of the year. And so at the end of the year in May, when we went to the Echo Center, it was all about butterflies. And they had this butterfly pavilion that we got to go through and see all really lovely, lovely butterflies. It was a little overwhelming for me when they tell you to wear something colorful and the butterflies will be attracted. Oh my. Now there's a lot of technology going on. I don't use this much technology with my little ones. We just read books. And so this year, Megan and I got together and we were talking about an end of the year field trip. And the Echo Center was offering all about my space, so outer space, which fit really well into the curriculum that the 1st and 2nd grade was studying. And being pre-K, we talk a lot about astronauts and how little ones want to be an astronaut because it would be so much fun going out into outer space. And it really just kind of developed and we ran with their interest. And so we got to, oh, don't restart now. We decided that we were going to go to Echo, and we went last Friday. I took all 8 kiddos. A lot of them were super excited about just riding the bus because they don't ride the bus, or not all of them do. And so that was a big thing for them, which was nice because we got to talk about bus safety and what it's like to be on the bus.
Would like to interrupt you just for a second. 3 and 4-year-olds can go ahead and ride a regular school bus? They don't need booster seats?
3-year-olds cannot.
So these are just the 4-year-olds?
But the 4-year-olds can.
Okay.
But because we have some shore-arm kiddos, their parents transport them. So it was the first time for some of the kiddos to be with us. And then some of the 4-year-olds get their parents bring them and pick them up. Let's see here. I'm starting a little behind because a lot of it is pictures that you get to see like our experience. So I asked the kids during lunchtime what their favorite part of our trip was. And so they said watching the Cool movie, which is a 3D movie that we got to watch all about outer space. So we got to wear the glasses, which the kids thought was really cool. You'll see some of the pictures, like they're pulling down the glasses and they're taking a look at the screen and why it's blurry and then putting it back up on. The dinosaur, which is actually a whale, but if you're a 4-year-old, it would look like a dinosaur skeleton that was way up high, so meeting on the ceiling. I used their words. Petting the fish star, which is a sea star. It's one of the touch exhibits at Echo. So they got to use their one little finger and touch it. And, we talked about what it feels like, and they came up with some really great words. Writing letters to Champ. We are fortunate enough to be right here on Lake Champlain, so we talk about Champ a lot. Dinosaurs is another really big topic in the pre-K classroom. And so we talk a lot about how Champ is from, you know, the dinosaur era, and he lives in the water, and what he might eat, and what he does for fun, and oh yes. Being an astronaut, because there were some really cool exhibits that they got to like put their hands in the gloves and try to manipulate like small little bolts like the astronauts would be doing, and how difficult that was, and how much patience you would have to have in order to be an astronaut. Looking for Champ. Watching the sand change colors. There's a part that's all about the water basin and its kinetic sand, so that when the kids move the sand around, it changes colors depending on the level. And they thought that was really cool, watching it turn from brown to green to blue, and then pushing the button and the water goes away, and how they changed it. And then playing on the slide, because all 4-year-olds love to play. Oh, that's kind of hard, I'm sorry. So 3 things that we learned. The first one was animals that live in Lake Champlain. There's a lot of different fish. We spent a lot of time looking at all of the different fish. I'm really glad that Bill Taylor was with me, because I know nothing about fish, and he could name them all without having to cheat and read, which was great. And then he talked about a lot of different things. And how important it is to take care of our lake, so the fish that live there can live a happy life. That outer space is really, really big. They got this from watching the movie, and they talked about like how far away all of the different planets are, and then how many galaxies there are. A light year is a little above their understanding, but we tried to do a quick little experiment in our bathroom with light and showing them like how far the light can go, so you can see it. But there's lots of planets and galaxies that they can see up in our night sky, and the big looking machine, which is the telescope, that helps us see them. They talked about the Hubble telescope, and the kiddos really thought that was cool, that one man was able to see all of these extra things that are up there that people hadn't seen before. And so now they're ready to go find their own stars. And then how mountains were formed. It wasn't in my curriculum, but this is what happens. You go someplace. They played with a mountain making machine, as they called it. I have some pictures to show you. And it was all about how they pulled it away, and then they pushed it together, and it goes up, and that's how the mountains are formed. And so they really enjoyed that, and they had to work together, which was really nice to see them pulling and pushing. And so we're going to just move on to our field trip pictures. If you have any questions about what you see up there, I will happily explain, but I'm not going to go through and narrate each one for you. It's a nice guy. They got to make the sun darker and brighter here, which we thought was really cool. They had a nice little camping exhibit all set up, and of course we had to play with it all. And rest. That would be the big looking machine. This was really cool. As you move the strings, it makes music. I actually had to ask them to leave because I think we could have stayed there all day listening to the music. This class is very music focused. We do a lot of singing in our classroom, and they have the chance to go in and be with Miss Kusan, who is our music teacher, one day a week, and so they're really big into music. We're becoming an astronaut now. Oh, so many things. If you have a chance, I'd highly recommend going up and seeing the exhibit. I think it's open for a couple more days, but I'm not exactly sure.
You can close this weekend.
Okay. This was all about gravity, and so of course, you know, here's Bill Taylor. He is my paraprofessional. He's trying to explain to them all about gravity. There was balls that swing around. Legos, gotta build your spaceship. launching a rocket. We had to pump it up for them, and then they got to hit the button, and that was a lot of fun. They chased the rockets great. Oh, here they are. This is where they put their little hands in, and they tried so hard. I mean, the gloves are not child size to start with, but I mean, they were really working hard at it, as you can tell by some of their faces. So that was the My Sky exhibit, and then there are the permanent exhibits here at ECHO. There is a space, a replica of one of the shipwrecks that they get to climb on and play in, and they were pirates. So they went from being astronauts to pirates, because that's what a mind of a 4-year-old does. It's lovely to watch. Peeking through. Champ is very big in our classroom. So we had to watch the movie, I read everything to them, and then where the stool is where they got to write their letters to Champ. And my kiddos have been working really hard at writing their names. They can all write their names. And then I had one little one that asked me how to write quite a long letter, and it was wonderful to ask. Like, she would ask me, and I would tell her the letters, and she wrote a beautiful little letter to Champ, basically telling him to have a good life and she'll see him soon. The fish, big fish, lots of fish. I don't know the fish. These are little bugs that they were looking at. Turtles. I didn't take pictures of snakes because they're not my favorite.
Were they as angelic as you're making them appear in these photographs the entire time you were there?
They really were. A lot of it is, there's a couple that was like, hey, could you turn and look at Sam? But this is just their wonder across their faces right here. I mean, this is who they are. They loved being there. It would have been nice to have a little bit more time, but unfortunately with the bus schedule, we just couldn't make it happen. But it's definitely one of those things that I think you could go back probably 100 times and they'll see something different every time. This is the camera that they have out on the lake, and they were moving it around really fast, so I had to walk away because they were making me like sick. But they loved it. They're like, look how fast we can see everything. Yeah.
They are a pretty exceptional group, and that's part of the beauty of having them at 3. Is that they really are looking to the adults for guidance and settle in very quickly to the patterns and the routines.
So this is the kinetic sand, the sand that turned colors or whatever, the magic sand. They really enjoyed it, pushing and pulling, and this is their creation that they worked together to build, and the conversations around it were phenomenal.
I like it too. I was there Sunday.
This was another one that, like, it was through the water. I had to walk away. It just makes me too, like, motion sickness. I didn't know that it could happen, but it does. It was a little cold being by the lake. But they were troopers, and they're the ones that had to go look for Champ. And finally I was like, okay, I'm really cold. You must be really cold. We have to come inside. So here they are, they're looking for Champ. A couple of them swear that they saw him way out there, and I don't doubt it. They got to build more sand. This is the touch tank with the sea stars. I had a couple that were a little hesitant, but once they saw their friends do it and it didn't hurt, then they were okay. And some of them had no fear. Oh, this is the mountain machine, as they keep calling it, so they had to pull it apart and then work together, because it is really heavy. Mr. Taylor and I had done it the first time for them, and then I suggested that they work together, and so they did. There is a Champ Lane that the kids can go in and explore and play. And I'm sure you all remember when you had little ones that water play was always one of their favorites. So So we got a little wet, which is great. Here's the slide. That's what she was talking about, the slide. She's actually the one that's on the right-hand side. So big smile on her face, really enjoyed it. Here's the 3D movie. It was about a half hour long. I enjoyed watching their expressions on their faces as they saw the galaxies and then pulling down their little glasses to see why it's considered a 3D movie. And you can tell that we had a really great trip because that's how our bus ride home went. And that's it.
Wasn't that nice quiet ride?
It was, but it's a fun day right there in pre-K. I mean, that's what that picture shows, is a fun day in pre-K. Do you have any questions?
I would actually just recap one thing. So you have how many 4-year-olds?
I have 8 4-year-olds.
And next year for 4-year-olds, for the full day program, you'll
I
have,
believe it's 14.
14
is
with a waiting
the
list.
number that we have right
and
now.
almost all of those are from Bridport.
No, there's 2 Shoreham kiddos that are currently in my pre-K 3 program they're just in the pre-K 4 as well.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's all Bridport kids?
I
A couple of
believe
the
so.
separated.
No,
There's
there's,
some more Shoreham.
there are a
kids
couple
than
more
that.
Shoreham kiddos, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Again, I'm Andrew Way, I teach kindergarten here at Report. This summer, I received an email that was showing some different options that were available to us through the Vermont Arts Council and some other places. And Circus Smirkus kind of caught my attention, and I started to do a little bit of research about their artist in residency that can come to your school for a 5 or 10-day program. And their big focus is on helping to build confidence, teamwork, and other social skills while teaching them some of the circus tricks and some of those things to help bring them out of their comfort zone. And for us here, why wouldn't we want to find another way for them to build some of their social skills, and especially building confidence and teamwork as a class? So I brought it to our staff and said, hey, what do you think about this? So pre-K 3 all the way through 6th grade was able to participate in this program. We had Circus Smirkus here before I became a teacher here, so they had it a few years ago, and they did a 5-day program, and they said it was great, but the children just started to get into it, and then it was over. So we decided to try a 10-day residency to give them that extended time to be able to really immerse themselves in the program. So through ASF, they were generous and gave us a grant. Our PTO was very generous in helping fund, and then our families helped me put on, as well as the staff, a pancake breakfast, which was a first for us since I've been here for 3 years of trying to do a community meal. So that was really nice to see a lot of families that may not be able to come during the day to participate in fundraisers or after school were really on board for, I can come and help cook, I can come and do dishes. So that was another great thing that came out of this residency, was getting more of our community involved. So for my presentation, I have a lot of just photos to talk about. So pre-K students did a lot of storytelling and got into some of the beginning aspects of circus with the scarves and parachute games and things like that, and movement. Kindergarten, we were doing feather balancing, they were doing scarf juggling, they got into plate spinning, and the woman, our artist Jill Fleming, who came, said, well, I've never really done this with kindergartners before, but your group looks ready to try it. And so it was something that they ended up doing in the performance, so it was really nice to see them excel in something that she hadn't seen before. And then 1, 2 did a lot of the same skills we did, and then they added one more thing. And then 3, 4 would do some of the same skills that the other students had done, and then they were challenged with some of like the rollabola, which is the board on the pipe, The older students were doing the double sticks, which were the juggling, and then at the end, they got to experiment with some of the stilts that she had. It was really great to see our students go from day 1, day 2 of being like, what is this? It's new, it's hard, I'm not really sure, to, oh, I really enjoyed this and I can't wait to go to circus today. During the residency, every classroom had about a 30 to 40 minute period every day with our artist. So they really got to get in there, learn things. And our artist was great about making sure that we spent a few minutes on each thing and then they got to have some time to explore on their own. And day to day, they kind of built off of the skill that they learned the day before. They had a lot of circus secrets that they were working on, so it was try again. One that my students really picked up on was you have to ask for help to get help, which we can say that all day long in the classroom, but hearing it from someone else, it's like a new idea, and oh yeah, I never thought of that. So it's great for them to be able to hear things in a different light. The other one was, stop, think, and then reflect. So it may not be the skill that you're really great at, but you gave it a try. So the next thing is something you might be ready for. With the older grades, it was nice to see a lot of teamwork happening and helping them to build off of one another of, this is really tough for me, how did it work for you? So as you can see from some of our photos, on the left with the plate spinning, my students were also applying our force and motion unit. They were really frustrated at first with why is the plate flying off, and so we started talking about, well, how hard are you pushing it, how hard are you spinning it, and then, oh, this is force, we learned about this back in December, so they were reapplying some of the things that they had learned to be more successful. Part of this is some of our performance that we had. So we had a community and school-wide performance to conclude our program. And the students weren't really pressured into knowing that there was a performance going. We kind of just left it until about the day before so that it wasn't anxiety-driven or anything like that. And they also got to choose which skills they wanted to participate in and which they didn't. So they kind of had to, they got to have some of that control. And here you can see some of the students practicing the roll ball. So you have some that were practicing just the single layer, and then we had some students that were really getting a hang of it and were excelling and going on to the next level. And then to the far right, you can see students practicing on the stilts around the building. The paddle walkers here, these were quite tricky for students to, oh, this is going to be easy. It's just like a bike. I can just jump right on, and then having to figure out how to get the momentum going and have control. So my students, once Circus Emergence was over, I asked them, we're working on a lot of writing in our room, so I gave them the prompt of I liked, and they had to finish the sentence. The student on the right, the second sentence really kind of captures it all. It was super fun, is what she told me. So in kindergarten, they're really working on writing phonetically and how things sound to them. So they were drawing what they enjoyed. And we have a lot of students that are working on adding more detail and what else can I add to tell you about my experience. So on the right, we have I liked the plates because you can balance the plates. On the left, we have I liked spinning plates. It was fun. Our older students in 5-6 were in the middle of doing some poetry writing. So they picked one of the skills that they had been working on to design a poem and then write that poem in the shape of what they, the material was that they were doing. So on your way out, like, those are still up on the board if anybody wants to take a look at them. And then the 5th and 6th grade also had Tim OLeary come out, and he helped them do some videotaping. He helped them come around and do some videotaping while we were doing some of our skills, and then they worked to, let's see if I can get this to wake back up.
If you cycle source on the projector, it might work.
try if you pull the cord out of your computer that connects, only because that works really good.
It's a pretty high-tech solution you got there.
It's a good thing it worked, 'cause that was all I had.
So Tim helped them set up the camera to go around and tape different things, and then he came back and visited with them to help them edit, find clips that they wanted. They worked on adding titles and taking out the sound that was in the background, adding music. So this is one of our 5th graders projects that she did.
What's been the challenging, could have been a challenging thing last week and a half? What have you learned about being a challenge? Those are pretty complicated questions. What's been challenging and what have you learned because of it?
When I very first saw the Palo Waters, I was imagining that it was going to be one of the easiest things ever. When I first tried it, it was going slow, and it was hard at first, but I'm
And I know several students are still continuing to work on editing their projects and finalizing what they would like theirs to look like. Last week, our 3rd through 6th went to the Flynn and saw a Cirque big machine. And when they were on the bus, our 5th and 6th grade teacher was telling me that some of them were like, did you see some of the juggling that they were doing? Like, we were having trouble just juggling rings, so imagine how long it took them to practice and get down what they were doing. And then in my classroom, my students really took to the feather balancing. And we've been really looking for some activities that help us calm ourselves and focus on our breathing. So I had purchased some peacock feathers, and one of the tips that she gave them when they were doing them was to make sure they're looking up at the eye. So when they were practicing in the gym here, they were doing a lot of moving and walking around with them. So now we're working on what does it mean to be stationary with them and just really focus on looking at the top of the feather and focusing on your breathing and how does that help your body to kind of come back down. So we've kind of taken parts of the Circus experience and brought it back into the classroom. So we're really hoping next year to find another residency to bring to the students. And then maybe down the road in a few years, Circus again, so that the younger students can then see all the things that are happening that they didn't get to do. And it was really great for the performance as well because students didn't know what everybody else was doing because we didn't have a rehearsal, so it was new and exciting for everybody of, well, I didn't get to try that, maybe next time that'll be something I get to do. So, anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Feather balancing, wow.
And the part that Andrea won't tell you while Meg's getting set up is how much work Andrea did. The grant writing, even the coordinating of a schedule and creating a schedule, which is in and of itself crazy making. Coordinating the pancake breakfast, getting parent volunteers. I mean, it was a ton of work that Andrea added to her day-to-day schedule while she was still doing, everything else that she does every single day. So we're very, very grateful for all that she did to make that happen.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Megan Cheresnick. I am the first and second grade teacher here at Bridgeport. And I'm going to take you on an abridged version of our wacky adventure into our IB unit, where we were looking at patterns, predictable patterns, and we were using the sky and what we see in the sky in order to observe patterns that are especially predictable patterns.
How many first and second graders do you have?
We have 13 now, but at the time we had 12. Great. So what you see here is, it looks like it's a lovely sun and then a summary of some facts about the sun, but this is actually a culmination of a week's worth of exploration into the sun. So from this, we started off by just talking about what we know about the sun. We talk about schema, which is everything that you have in your mental filing cabinet. So we started off by talking about, like, so what do you have in your schema about the sun? What do you know? And then we added it together on a big piece of paper, and then we kept on adding to it as we were discovering new things about it. So we did personal research and sharing, so we did that on the computer, and then we also had books. My personal favorite was, do we have any They Might Be Giants fans out here? Nobody? Okay. Okay, so here's a fantastic song from like 1994 by They Might Be Giants. I won't play the whole thing, but like listen to the words. They're like, the sun is a massive incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace where hydrogen is built into helium at a temperature of millions of degrees. So I played that first for my kids, and of course the kids are like, is that English? And of course I was like, yes, my darlings, that is English. But what was fantastic is we broke it down afterwards, and we talked about what each of the words meant. So the next day and then the day after that, they got more and more comfortable with the words, and eventually they understood what I'd say 87% of the song was. And then we put together actions, like a dance with it. So like the sun is a massive incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace. And then we'd like show like being really hot with the furnace and things like that. So here's part of the song. I won't play the whole thing, but it gives you an idea of like one resource that we're using to learn about it.
The sun is a massive incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace where hydrogen is built into helium at a temperature of millions of degrees. Your home is not the sun, is not a place where we could live, but here on Earth there'd be no life without the light it gives.
Okay, you get the idea. A lot more fun than just reading from a textbook. So that's our song, and I wish I had videotaped the kids doing the dance because you would melt with how adorable it was. But so we did that. We observed, we looked at the sun, but I made it very clear that you weren't to look exactly at the sun. So we looked at the sun, but we then saw videos showing like NASA photographs and videos of like real-time sun, and then talked about what we saw. Because normally when you ask kids to draw a sun, they're just going to draw like a circle with yellow in it. It's really, oh, is that the only color that you see? So we really kind of broke it down and did some really good observational skills, which was fun. And then we had a fake sun in the hallway where the kids stood at one end, and then I held the big sun, and then they had to show like what the size was. Like, was it getting bigger or was it getting smaller? So we know that the sun is gigantic, but why does it look so tiny in the sky? So that was just one way that we were kind of like showing the size of it to the kids. Sorry, my computer is not letting me do it that way. Sorry, technology and I don't get along very well. Andrea, can you help me?
I heard that if you just unplug the cord and plug it back in.
Thank you. You're my hero. So what you see here is when you look at the sun, it's not just a big yellow orb because they know that the sun has lots of different colors in it. In one of my previous lives as a teacher, I was an art teacher, so anytime like I can get kids to really like look at things and incorporate art, I tried to do it. So it was exciting to kind of get the kids really like observing closely at it. So next thing is we were talking about the predictable pattern of the sun. So where does it start? Does it stay there the whole time? And we were going to go outside and we were going to stand in one place, trace our feet, and then draw the shadow. And then we're going to go in the middle of the day, same thing, trace, well, not trace our feet, stand in the same exact place, trace our shadow, and then again at the end of the day, and see what happened in the shadow. Guess what happened when I tried to go outside and have them trace the shadow? It was a really cloudy day. So, tried going in the morning, it was really cloudy. Tried going in the afternoon, really cloudy. The sun miraculously came out at the end of the day, so we were able to start it. And then the next day, thankfully, was a sunny day. So now whenever it's a sunny day, my kiddos go, oh, look, it's a great day for shadows. Yes, it is. It's a great day for shadows. But we eventually got to see that like the length of the shadows changed, the positions of the shadows changed, and then we traced with like our hand where the sun was at each part of the day. Here is some more artwork. Hooray! In 1 second. Yes. So the kiddos used a technique called crayon resist, where they had to color in the colors really heavy with crayon and then paint over with watercolor. And can you put these in order? They're all done by the same kiddo. Which one do you think goes first?
In terms of the day?
Is there one that goes first? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
It started really good conversations with my kids. Where should we start? Is there an actual start? Does it start with the day? Does it start with the sun rising? And we decided that there was no right answer. But here's where we put it. So we started with the sun rising, the midday sun, sun setting, and then the moon. Which brings us to our next predictable pattern, moon. The kiddos had moon journals where they had to go home and then draw what the moon looked like each night, and then the next day we would come in and talk about what the moon looked like, and then using our predictable patterns, what do you think the moon is going to look like tomorrow? And then finally, when we got to a full moon, what's going to happen to it? Can it get any bigger? Is it going to get smaller? Where is it going to start getting smaller? So then we started to kind of observe the changes from there. And then we matched the percentage of the brightness. So if you can see, I know it's really tiny, but I took a picture from the internet that showed the moon at each phase from each of the nights for the month. So then after that month was over, we had the corresponding percentages. So if it was like a waxing crescent, we'd have 3%. If it was a waxing gibbous, it would be like 62%. So we'd put the numbers in order and then see if we could match them to the pictures. And here's where things get really awesome. Here is where I had an original plan for where I thought this was going to go, because at this point we were also reading a whole bunch of folk tales having to do with the night sky, stars, sun. It was fantastic. But then my kids said something that was awesome. They're like, oh, it's like money! And I'm like, oh my goodness, what are you talking about? And then they're like, no, it's like money, like, you know, out of 100. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so we took it and we ran with it. It was fantastic. So, for example, well, I might have just given it away. What do you think? What do you think the moon has to do with money? Any ideas? Anyone? So this moon equals 41 cents. And this made total sense to so many of my kids. And I was like, you all are geniuses. Slow clap for you. So it was the idea that if this is a 41% bright moon, 41 out of 100, it's the same thing as 41 cents. So they had so much fun because they were like, oh, yeah, totally, 41%. So if we have, because we were also at the same time doing money, and with the money we were doing the 100 frames. So here we've got 41 out of 100 colored in, 41%. And then using the change, my husband was so excited that all of his change that he was saving for the last 6 months, I totally hoarded and hot glued onto things. He was not happy. But it went to a good cause. So we matched the money with the percentages with the 100 frames to each of the
stages of the moon.
Thank you, stages of the moon. And they had like the best time doing it. And here is what our final thing. It looks a little sloppy, but that's, you know, first and second grade work. And it all came from the kids, which is what was so exciting for me. Like I had no idea it was going to go this way. I had these like great ideas of doing like, you know, a big quilt with all these different like cultures represented, which would have been wonderful, but this really, it came from the kids and it came from their ideas and it tied in like everything so seamlessly. It was exciting. And then this is just one last thing that we did is as like a culminating activity, I took all of their artwork. So we did the sun, they had to show me the sunrise, the midday sun, and then sunset. So we finished that. And then, after reading How About Please Get the Moon for Me by Eric Carle, we looked at his, the way he created his artwork, and then we created our own moon versions. And then we had all of the moon phases, and then put them all together in like a big cauldron. And we're like, okay, go for it, put it in order. And it was fun, like watching the kids take each of their, works of art and be like, no, it can't go there because look, it's waxing. So you can't have, it's getting smaller from that. And it was really fun kind of like listening to like them using what they already learned and applying it to creating what we have now on our wall outside of our classroom. And I believe that was the last slide. That's it. All right.
Questions?
Questions?
So I have one. This all sounds very IB-ish.
Yes.
Could you remind me what the sort of the questions are for that age group within IB? Is it our place in the world or something?
This one is for how the world works.
How the world works.
Mm-hmm.
So it does fit right in.
Yes.
Well, it's more how the moon works, mind you, but.
So is this new curriculum that you came up with this year because of IB, or is this some stuff you've done that you sort of
Past
morphed
both.
into it?
Yeah, I've used the sun song previously. I've used the moon previously. But I haven't used any of like I've used the money for like, let's match this with this, or like, if you're gonna buy this, can you match this amount of money with that? But I hadn't used all of that in that specific kind of order.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And there were parts of this IB unit that you designed in collaboration with other teachers in the district.
Yes.
As sort of a starting point, and
Yes.
then made it your own here as it took on
Yes.
the kids, right?
Yeah, for example, the idea with the feet and the shadows came from Joy Dobson, who's an amazing educator over at Weybridge. So yeah, it wasn't
And what was the time frame of the?
it was about a month and a half.
Yeah. And how was the process for you? I mean, in terms of coming up with the curriculum and working, did you feel when you started the month-long that you were in a good place, or were you like, oh, I'm
I felt
flying
like
by
I was
this?
in a good place, and I appreciated how open everything was. I think if I didn't have the freedom to kind of explore and like go where the kids wanted to go, it would have been a little bit forced. But I think the fact that I could like abandon my original intentions and then kind of go with the math route that the kids were interested in kind of made it more exciting for me and for the kids.
Yep.
The flexibility was the only way that was possible.
Percentage is something that kids in first and second grade learn normally?
Not normally in first grade. In second grade, yes. In first grade, if you think about it in terms of money, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not part of the first grade standards. Questions?
Thank you very much. Thank all of you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. It's great. All right, now back to the other stuff. All right, we all received the report of the superintendent. Any questions on that?
Can I add a couple things?
And you may add a couple things, especially since it was written before May 5th.
So a couple things I wanted to just mention that are not in the report. 2 months ago, we presented, I think it was in Cornwall, on the 21st Century grant that we were pursuing. We did not receive that, but we do feel, based on the feedback we got, that we have a template to move from to be in a much better place next time. And it's pretty common for people that apply to the 21st Century grant the first time to get feedback with, these are the things that you need to look at and shift slightly with your proposal. So that's something that we'll be working on to submit next year. We are pretty committed to improving and increasing our extracurricular activities and access. We see that as something that we need to spend more time on, and 21st Century Grant is an awesome way to get started on it. So that's something that we will be continuing to put energy into. Our school-based health center is, I just wanted to let everyone know, I've shared a couple times in reports and physically about the Community Partnership Council. We've got some folks here that, are you going to both talk about that a little bit?
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to steal the presentation, which I'm really good at. Our transition to DataPath, our health insurance shift from future planning continues.
Does everybody know what he's talking about?
So I've sent a few emails recently about kind of what's happening and the transition we're making, just to bring everyone up to speed. We are in a blackout period right now from future planning to data path. VHI has, I sent an email to everyone showing kind of what the process was for VHI supporting people through that change. So over the next couple of weeks, we're working both with data path and with the association to figure out the transition and make sure it's as smooth as possible. Obviously, it has not been easy these first months of the new plans, and there was an overextension, as you all know, by future planning, which we've just been kind of working through. So we're hopeful that with the change, things will get better, and we'll be obviously working both locally and statewide. This is not something that is happening just to us, it's happening to many, many other districts. So we're going to work through that and feel pretty confident that we'll get there, especially over the next few weeks, or the kind of crunch time to put all that together. Legislative update. I don't know if I should say anything or if he should. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. So we're in hopefully the final week, but maybe final 2 weeks of the legislative session. The stuff that is affecting education is all in sort of last minute flux, but there was an original tax bill that looked at shifting about $60 million from property tax to income tax with an income tax surcharge. The Senate made quick work of that. So we're back to sort of the business as usual, which will result in, at least at this point, a 5-cent tax increase, and this just has to do with the fact that we spent down a surplus last year and have to make up for it this year. And that is still, so now that then becomes a problem because the governor said no new taxes, and no increased taxes. This is, I guess, a new tax in his mind. Sometimes I wonder whether he understands that the education fund isn't a legislative decision. It is a decision of the cumulative decision of all the school districts. So anyway, that is what it is. The other big piece of legislation is a special education bill, which has much more to do with sort of special education within the schools than higher level board stuff. But it's going to essentially move schools from sort of the way it's done now, where 2 weeks every year they do these time studies, or maybe it's 2 weeks a couple times a year.
2 weeks, it's one, so it's not schedules versus time studies, and we do one in the fall and one in the spring, and we average those out to determine what is the eligible percentage of time that special educators and paras.
So this is when all the special educators have to literally write down to the minute what they're doing and how much time they spend. And the idea is starting in 2020 school year, I guess that'd be 2021, to make it more like a block grant where the schools are given what they usually get, and it's up to them to figure out how to spend it correctly. No more writing everything down and timing it all out. Now there's lots of protections, of course, because special ed is a federally guaranteed service. But the hope is that those dollars can be used more effectively on a broader range of population, so that you can actually intervene before kids become special ed kids on IEPs. That seems to be going well, and I think everybody's in favor of it. The governor seems to like it. And over a period of 4 years, it will. Everybody will get their special ed based on the total number of students that they have. So they might get $1,500 per student, all students, counting all students. So it's what they call a census block grant. So that's a big deal. I asked a lot of questions about pre-K. That is a kind of a constant battleground between two agencies and two House committees. Human Services and Education, both at the agency level and at the legislative level, are kind of fighting over oversight, regulation, and a bunch of other things. We still can't get along. Those kids were getting along a lot better. We had a proposal to essentially, right now pre-K kids are counted at 0.46 of a student, and we wanted a proposal, we being the House Education Committee, we wanted a proposal that would allow places that offered more than the guaranteed 10 hours a week, to count those kids as 0.7. So like the Bridport program next year could count the kids as a 0.7 of a student. That way they get a little bit more state funding. It actually is more an impact on tax rates. That was just shot down today and that's the House Education Committee. The House Human Services Committee said, no, that creates unfair competition for the private pre-Ks. Anyway, we're working it out. I think that's about all I have for legislative update. It all could change tomorrow.
Statewide health.
Oh, and yes, I don't know where that stands. So the governor has said he wants as part of cost savings, a statewide health benefit for public school employees. The real opportunity to save was last year when we moved from the old plans to the new plans. There's definitely some benefit to negotiating this all at a statewide level, just in terms of plan management, plan predictability, costs, understanding what the cost increase would be. The Vermont NEA has sort of come out with a value statement saying we would be in favor of this if a statewide plan had contained these certain values, most notably of which is income sensitivity, which is actually something we have in our contract for support staff. So the Senate, more than the House, is working on that. I haven't seen it yet. Not sure what the result will be, but the NEA says we can go there. Lots of other people can say we can get there. So it just really comes down to more of a question of, is it a cost savings measure? Can you make it a cost savings measure? Or is it more of a sort of more efficient and smart way to just sort of manage healthcare? Yeah, so that's that. But that, all this stuff is really literally day to day at this point as we try to get out by Friday or Saturday. Remember, Peg? Yes. So, yes, I was going to ask you some questions about the community outreach partnership because the report talked about a meeting you're going to have on May 5th, which is come and gone at this point, right? So anyway, we're going to adjust our agenda a little bit and let you folks give your presentation, if you don't mind.
Hello, I'm Erica Garner. I'm the district community coordinator. I don't think I've met everyone before, but this is my second year in this role for the district. And Christina Thompson and I have been working together on some different initiatives to strengthen partnerships with our communities. So,
yeah, I was part of the action team, or community action team that started with the strategic plan, and so this whole process has grown out of that particular goal. And this year we've just taken off a number of initiatives, so it's been really exciting.
So we've extended an invitation to the elementary schools this year to create partnership teams. And we recognize that there's a lot of work going on, so we wanted to allow teams schools that felt they were ready to start a partnership program to join in and pilot school teams for next year. And so this year is a gearing up year to really kind of hit the ground running for next year. So we have 4 schools that were interested: Mary Hogan, Salisbury, Shoreham, and Weybridge. And during March, we extended an invitation to the communities to join these teams. And the teams are a collaboration between administrators, teachers, school support staff, such as nurses and counselors, and then parents in the community. And so we have between 4 and 7 members per team. And this past Saturday, we had a training. Team training, several teams. There were 14 people in total across the 4 schools at Weybridge, and we went through the Johns Hopkins. We're using the Johns Hopkins research-based program for organizing a partnership program. And so we walked those teams through their program using the 6 types of involvement, which are parenting, learning at home, volunteering, decision-making, collaboration with the community, and there's one more. Yeah. And so basically you look at The program is to work in partnership with those groups to work on school goals with the ultimate goal of increasing student success. So it's working on goals that the schools already wants to do, but looking at engagement and involvement activities linked to those 6 types of involvement to make it happen. And so
So I think that the training was totally wonderful. Erica and I did training in the fall to become trainers. And so it was exciting for both of us to come together with these 4 teams. I think the most exciting thing for me, and I think for the group there, was that they're primarily community members and parents. There were 3 principals involved with 3 of the teams that were there. And we came together as four separate groups and really shared a great deal. A piece of it is that some of the parents are incoming kindergarten parents. So they're experiencing ACSD as a given, where other times when we brought people together, it's been the separate schools, and the collaboration has been on a level between those schools or those communities. But when we're bringing people together now, and particularly when it isn't all faculty, we're really seeing people just accepting, thinking they don't have another reality necessarily, that it's ACSD and we all have things to share. So there's a great deal of curiosity, sharing of ideas. There was just, the first half of the day was almost all, what about this? Oh, well, we do this. And so it was very, very pleasant. And then my sense is we had thought about 2 collaborative meetings at least a year. I think we're going to be doing at least quarterly collaborative meetings across the partnership teams. And that will extend to the others. And within the next couple of, I think probably 3 years, will be K-12, so that sharing is really occurring. But that was a distinctly different feel from the past, and part of it has to do with people come with that as the context, not having to relearn that or learn that context.
Yeah, the energy in the room was really great, having all the teams. Number one, they were sitting together as teams, so they were getting to know each other as a team, but also with across the school teams and the collaboration across schools, the energy was really great, and the feedback was very, very positive about that experience and the training.
Right, so the idea is that people will have, the teams will all have a plan that's for 3 or 4 goals to achieve during the next school year. Those plans will be pretty much solidified by the end of this school year, so that we're really starting off the new school year, each one of the schools with plans for really collaborating.
Could you give a couple examples of what those goals might look like?
So the primary goal that we all ended up working on, in the Johns Hopkins models, there's usually 2 academic goals, a behavioral goal, and a community partnership goal. Most of I think all 4 teams really focused on the partnership goal with the community. And the primary piece I think that we're all focused on, and I don't have the language for all of them, is how do we really involve families, all families, at some level within the school towards the success of their children, recognizing that there isn't a family in the community that doesn't want that for their child, but we haven't hit our stride in terms of how to really support them in being part of the school. So being very specific about that, how we would do that, and recognizing again that that's not a due to people, but really an inviting in and changing how we do things in order to do that.
And the great thing about the Johns Hopkins program too is they give us a lot of great materials and resources to use, so we don't have to reinvent everything. And one is a starting points inventory, so we can really take stock in what we're doing in our schools, and what are we doing well, and what areas can we grow. So it also helps teams kind of zero in on where they might like to start with this work. So it's really helpful.
And because it's systematic, it's not our usual, which I can say from 25 years here, hand reading, we're just not reaching everybody, and we wish we did. And to a great deal of sadness and sometimes anger about that. but that because it's systemized and really focused and there are a lot of really wonderful discussions, I think it will be that we're not just staying in the same place and admiring the problem over and over again. It's very helpful.
Any questions? Mary?
Is there an administrator on each of the teams?
Yes.
Okay, so that's...
And that was evident in the training, that having community members have access to their principal for a whole day in planning and that being part of the process, and then the administrator having access to their community in that way. They weren't simple conversations at all. It was really trying to solve problems. So that worked incredibly well.
Are these teams fixed at the moment, or will there be an invitation for more people to jump in next year?
Yeah, there'll definitely be more invitations as we get going. I think some of the teams I know, I think Mary Hogan feels like they are with 7 members right now. It's a good starting point, and that's where they want to be. But I think some of the other schools might be open.
Will be open, and I think by the nature of the work, the reach out or reach into the community so that more people will be involved, if not directly in the plan, will be invited in to help implement the plan.
And I think it's important to note too that some of the work that's being done won't just be done by the partnership teams, they'll also be working with the Friends group, because there's going to be areas where the Friends group might be doing activities that really nicely link to the work that their teams are doing. And so it was important to try and find representation from all of our Friends groups so that we're not duplicating efforts and that we're maximizing what we have going on. And I think all the teams have representation from the Friends group,
So it's 4 schools at the moment? And is that by choice, or is that because some schools you couldn't get participants?
We put it out as a voluntary pilot process, partly because we're new to it and want to see how it works, but also because there is a lot going on, and for some schools it was like, we're really interested, but taking something else on. So next year the idea is that all of the elementary schools would step on board, though before they're underway with plan, the rest of them would come in and begin, so they'd be up and ready the following year. And then middle school would step on, and we'd already have parents that were experienced with this so they could carry forward, and then the following year the high school. It may move faster. We didn't expect 4 schools this year to be ready to do it, just because there are so many things to do. But I would say with the excitement and the energy that came out of this training, that it's very likely that it will be, why don't we have that yet? I think that'll be one of the emotions.
Barry?
Jen, I noticed that your school combined with Shoreham to do some parent education program. So is there a possibility of Shoreham and Report working together as one partnership?
It's possible, but what came out of the meeting is that each group is going to act as a resource. Like if 2 schools are doing something or 1 school, that it's like, let's look at what they're doing and can we expand that. But I think the idea right now is that each school would have a partnership, and then we would work to collaborate together, just so there's enough focus that we're really looking into our community and who doesn't feel comfortable coming to the table. Who do we need to go out to? How do we need to create different settings to be really inviting? And how do we value everybody's work? Everybody's working for their children. But we don't value all of that work, and many people are afraid of schools for different reasons. There may be other emotions we took besides fear. But just really trying to focus there, but having more than 1 school work, or as the 4 that are working now, it was so evident that we would be sharing resources, ideas, training. So it was great interest in that training particularly.
And if I can add a little, with regard to this year, Mike stepped up and said yes, and I said no thank you, because I didn't feel like I had the capacity to take it on this year, and thought I'd let others be the guinea pig and maybe next year. It was interesting with those parenting classes, which actually started with with our school counselor and nurse, and our school counselor, our school nurse happens to also be the Shoreham school nurse, so the invitations were extended to all parents. And we had some really interesting discussions around that and whether or not either Mike or I should be there, or if an administrator present changes sort of the climate and tone of, and we haven't attended it. It's felt like a very safe place for parents because it's a school nurse and a counselor. And I still really wonder if the presence of an administrator, not because of who that administrator is, but that role changes that for parents. So we'll continue thinking about that with ours as we move forward and do more.
Great.
And we did talk about how important it was with that particular model, that there were relationships built with people outside of just creating a parenting course, right?
Yeah.
That oftentimes when we do that, and it's somebody coming in from the outside, or it's just named that, and there's no personal invitation or trust that's already built, that oftentimes people don't feel comfortable coming. They feel that they're being judged if they're invited, however that goes. So that seems to have been a particularly useful model, which then lends itself for us to build on that. But this whole training just allowed us to really share that. There was a number of programs that different communities didn't know were going on in other communities. And we seem like we know quite a bit about each other, but it's just really interesting.
Great. Thank you very much.
Did you want to, do you want to hear about the school-based, do you want to hear about the Community Partnership Council also and the work we're doing?
They definitely do.
Yeah.
They definitely do. Okay, so we'll transition, which is not unrelated.
All right, so we just did community partnership,
Council.
and now we're going to talk about community partnership.
Oh, this was team,
Team.
partnership teams.
All right, now we're on council.
Now we're on
All right, thank
partnership
you.
council.
So we get to get all the
Which was all
nomenclature
kind of
correctly here.
In our heads, we do it school partnership councils, and then there's the community partnership.
Okay.
And this work, I think as Christina mentioned, is many years in the making, so this is a pretty exciting moment. We're just finishing the second year of the Partnership Council. The foundational goal, which led to a lot of this work, had some foresight, not yet knowing that Act 46 was coming, and that we would see a big change in our governance structure here, which makes the partnership teams really important because of the loss of our local school board. So the timing of everything has been really fortuitous, and you know, what we're sharing right now is the result of really 3 years of work on this.
Yeah.
Not that it's done, but
No, it's just,
Yeah.
it's actually really just getting underway.
Yeah.
But it is a nice model, and it takes the town-based governance, or the district-based governance out of the small school board. It does take that out, but then it's put in this other piece that doesn't have that governance aspect to it. It's really the capacity of these partnerships that would come together, everybody on equal turf, and really making decisions together. So it's very comfortable. So just to continue on with the work of the Community Partnership Council, we've put in the reports, we've broken up into 3 subcommittees for this year. One is the whole child wellness, mentorship, and then partnership and outreach. And so the whole child wellness group has been looking at school-based health centers that are in other school districts in Vermont. And back in January, we went to Burlington School District and also Winooski. Winooski. And Burlington schools have centers in 4 of their schools, and Winooski is one campus that has K through 12, and they have just recently opened their center in October, and then they doubled their capacity from 1 morning a week to 2 mornings a week in April. Burlington schools have had centers in their schools for over 20 years, so they have a long history of having providers come into their schools and see their students. And so we've learned a lot about their model and their types of services that are offered. Basically, the nurses triage the need and arrange the appointments. The providers come in Burlington, and Winooski is a little bit different. Burlington schools, the provider meets with the student one-on-one and does all the paperwork, so it's a slower process, where at Winooski the nurse is side by side with the provider. and takes care of the notes and handling a lot of the administrative parts so that the doctor is just seeing the students. So they're actually able to see more students in a day, in a session than at Burlington schools. But they see them for things like sport injuries and like acute type things that might come up, strep tests and got a list here, some flus or rashes, ear infections, chronic conditions such as asthma and diabetes. They can see students for follow-up visits. When students start meds, they're able to go there and have the follow-up visits instead of having to leave school and go to their provider. There's a variety of reasons why students might be seen at the different centers. Parental permission is required. They don't replace the medical home. They don't do annual physicals or sports physicals. They don't give immunizations. So this is really a time during the school day for students to have access to the services they need. And a lot of times for a lot of families, getting to those services is a barrier. So this is a great way to remove those barriers and have students being seen sooner before things become much more problematic.
How's it funded?
So the upfront cost for equipment, supplies, and that kind of thing, the schools have used grants to fund. And then after that, the providers bill. So the parents, they get parents' permission, they get insurance information, and the providers' offices take care of all the billing. So the school districts don't pay for the providers' time. And they see that as a community service and recognize that they may not make back what they put in as far as their provider hour time. But they're happy to do it. So,
We're just beginning that relationship and the doctor.
Sure, yeah. So we are, so we found out, so a few other things we found out too, I just want to, before I get to the next part, is just that the school nurse's role is very important in setting up the appointments and helping facilitate. We don't need a lot of space. We saw spaces that were like the size of a closet where they were seeing students. So it's not like you picture maybe having to set up this whole special space. It's really, the amount of space needed is not large. You know, the different schools had between 2 hours to 6 hours a week. So, you know, we can start small. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week. It could be 1 day a week, 2 days a week for a few hours. Start small and grow from there. Right now the Community Partnership Council has been working on this, but we recognize that at some point, as we get further down the road, we want to pass this off to a steering committee with a different knowledge base to help see it through, if this is something that we are able to bring into our schools. So Winooski really stressed that they felt like a medical champion was really important to this process, and we have begun conversations with Paco, who is a pediatrician at MPAM, and Monica Benjamin, who's a nurse practitioner at Rainbow Pediatrics and at MPAM, which is Middlebury Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine. And they've spoken with both of those practices, and they are interested in the idea of starting a center at our high school. And so what they felt the next steps were to evaluate what would the cost be to get it started, like for the equipment and supplies, you know, looking at what do we have and what will we need, putting together a proposal, and evaluating the need, and also where can we get the money to help fund that upfront cost. And so they're going to be coming to the high school in a few weeks to look at the space, and we'll continue to have conversations about those things.
And the premise overriding would be the whole child wellness leads to better learning.
Right,
Is
yeah,
that
absolutely, yeah.
My thought process here, because I know, I mean, it's happened for years and years in all parts of the country, so it's not something that's
Not brand new.
totally brand new with many different permutations, I would gather, including what they take care of. The practitioner, whether it's contraception, whether it's sex education or the emergent problem, or whether it's, like you'd say, taking a strep culture that they don't have to go to the hospital or to the practitioner for. But
And so our vision is it would be to start at the high school and then to grow from there. And South Royalton's had a center in their schools for a long time also, and they have a provider going to all their schools. Sometimes it's maybe every other week, or maybe even every, it's dependent on the demand, but they have found a way to get someone to come out
But
to
I
all
think
of
you
their
also,
schools.
don't you have to somehow evaluate whether in fact it's making a difference in that ultimate goal? I'm just talking about, that some data that would actually say that that happens, that the person that has to seek that, whatever they're seeking or need at that time, is also helping them to be well and to be a better student, because that's in fact what the school's job is, albeit overall wellness. So I'm being cynic a little bit, but I mean, I think that those are we have to keep track of that too.
Definitely.
And that's been part of the conversation about what services will we provide. So we are looking at, students being ready to learn means students are healthy and well. So
absolutely.
Thinking about, what kind of services are needed, what can we partner on that can get those services in, because what we hear from the medical community is a lot of kids and families don't seek out that.
Oh, absolutely. Different than the healthcare goal of practice or community, so it's all intermesh.
I'm going to move us along, so yeah, it's still an ambitious agenda.
I have a question about continuity of care. So if a provider's in, but they're
this is a slightly big plan yet.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to get into about it too much, because there's two other facets of the council still.
I'm sorry.
You know, two more.
Oh, yeah, and I do want to say that one of the long-range goals is that piece of really looking at the early education supports from health as well, because that's where the big bang is that people come in healthy and stay healthy. And so we won't be staying, we're starting high school, that makes total sense, but the idea then is to get to elementary schools. So I'm part of the mentorship committee, and we're working on a plan to have mentors in place for a portion of the rising 7th graders. And we're working closely with the school counselors to sort of establish the criteria for the first year. And we've identified a number of students through the intake. We're not looking at names right now, but the middle school meets with 6th grade teachers and gets lots of information, and just thinking who are the students that would really thrive having somebody to have their back basically, and to do some interesting things with them and open some opportunities for them. So we're refining that list. In that process, we're working with the school counselors at MUNS. This week we're meeting with United Way. They also have a mentorship program. We've been doing some research with the Motives program, and that Debbie is doing is that crazy or is providing us with information about programming in high school as well. So we're really trying to pull all the information really together to really begin with some of the students. And what's sadly some of the elementary information from the academic program as well. That we spread throughout the elementary schools in different ways.
very much.
Thank you.
At this point in our meeting, I just want to encourage board members that if you're hungry or thirsty, please just get up and do this before the meeting table. And we're going to move our agenda around a little bit and go right to our bid awards. Rejects.
So this evening, we got 3 bids to award. These include, they put it in the library. And study.
Which one do you prefer?
Most dollar on that. Waybridge Roof. We received a couple of bids. Low bid was $41,000. This is rebuilding that roof. Product we're using is is that the same product that was used on the front wall? It is not.
There's such a huge difference between those 2 bids.
There was a huge difference. And when I first put money into the capital plan, I thought it was $20,000. So this is double what I thought it would be. And I'm finding, this season, I'm finding my estimates are way under what things are coming in. Which means I'll have to bump a few of the items that are on the capital project list per year.
A lot of work there.
There's a lot of work.
What's the cost of materials is also skyrocketing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, I asked them to break down, the cost of materials for this project is about $18,000. So it makes sense that it would get somebody to do it.
One thing I noticed in our last presentation, we stayed over here that way, but
I'm sorry, you got my back. Okay, absolutely. So the company that I would like to award the bid to for our Waybridge roof is Lake Jenkins Painting Incorporated. It's there. Do you want me to go through all 3 of these?
let's do all 3 of us, sure. Considering there was only one bid for the other 2.
Right. And yeah, the other 2 projects, I only received 1 bid each.
And that is surprised, by the way?
It was. We publicly advertised in the paper, and I personally sent out specifications for these projects to 7 different contractors for both projects. And I had, 3 different contractors, 3 or 4 different contractors show up at each walkthrough of these projects, and then to only get 1 bid. It just shows that there's plenty of work out there. People aren't interested in these smaller projects to bid on.
There's plenty of work and not many people to hire.
Yeah, that's a complaint throughout the trades, is they don't have very young people hiring. So the next bid that we will look at is for the Mary Hogan windows in U-Wing. And this is to replace the rest of the windows in U-Wing that have had difficulties with. And Millbrook Building and Remodeling submitted a bid for that for $59,250.
And how does that square with what you hoped it would be?
That's the closest one. So, yeah. You have any question, Mary?
Bruce, sorry, I have a question. So Ewing was remodeled in 2001. Why are the windows?
The product they put in, the windows don't function well. I don't know if you've been in Mary Hogan recently, but if you go to some of those windows, they're a metal, aluminum frame window, which is a commercial grade window. But they get jammed up if you go to open them, and then you have to use a rubber mallet to actually balance them back out, get them closed. And they've just been very difficult. And so over the past couple of years, we've been replacing 2 or 3 rooms at a time, and this will complete Ewing.
So these are better quality windows?
Yeah, this is it's a different style window. So we're going back to a regular double hung window that's a vinyl on the outside, wood core interior, Good insulation rating, low heat, so much easier to operate. And it's an Anderson. And then the third project I want to award a bid for tonight would be for the high school's tech design program, which the architect said called the robotics lab. So on the bid spec it's called the robotics lab. And that, the only bidder I had for that was McKiernan Group. And that bid came in at $224,300. We just got that bid in today. And that is well above what I anticipated it would be given the climate. Obviously, we're not going to be better. I can't get anybody else to bid on it. And I've worked with them. I think that's a reasonable bid as far as, you know, the building climate today. We've used them for a couple of projects in the past and been happy with their work.
I just remind folks that design tech or design is part of the IB curriculum, some of the necessity.
Yeah, the design is part of the curriculum. I would say that what this the redesign of the wood shop is really kind of taking that whole program in a different direction. So it's not required to change this for IB, but this is something that in terms of looking at that course and trying to make it less about just working with wood and more about the design and build process and incorporating technology. And I mean, it's going to, so far the interest this year in this course with the current setup as it is has been incredibly high. And you probably been there that you're in the building.
Oh yeah, it's been great participation. Both adults and students are excited about the things they're doing. It's really neat stuff.
In our prioritization of projects, which is part of the capital deal, you had a general idea what those were worth. Does the prioritization change if a bid comes in so much out of whack? That's my question regarding timing, years, all of those things.
Well, I looked at this when I first got it and said, okay, what if we don't do it this year? Or if we do it, how is it going to affect the rest of the list? And using my prioritization that I handed out to you a few meetings ago, I think if I were to not do the windows for the high school library, which I had in there, roughly $85,000 was my guess, that I can patch up for another year. They're inefficient and leaky. It's not necessarily a security risk. It's not a health safety item. So I feel comfortable bumping that out a year in order to get this completed. Because this does kind of roll right into the IB plan as far as the instructors thinking about it and how he wants to lay out his curriculum. And we're not going to get it at a better price next year.
And we are not bumping some of the more critical health.
Yeah, all the other things that were on the list, all of the critical items are still there. So just by not doing the library windows, it will afford us enough funds to continue to complete the rest of the project.
And this has an instructional impact for next year.
It was all related, but I thought.
Chris,
yeah, I mean, so when we talk about something like this retrofit, which I don't pretend to really understand, because it needs to go from workshop to technical, it starts to blur for me like the boundary between the first and the not any of that's not what it is, but I know there's, how much of this do we look at?
So with that conversation has been had. I know Bill has and others at the high school have been talking about the course center about looking at what courses we do offer and not being redundant. The Career Center doesn't have a course exactly like this. They do have a course that has some aspects of this, but it's more, I think it's kind of like graphic engineering and not quite what's the direction for this program. I'm going to say the same thing has been talked about for many years about the wood shop too, which was seen as a redundancy when there was a building trades first there too. So I think it's part of what we need to be looking at in the next year or two as the Career Center is really going through kind of deep core strategic planning to look at what are we going to become in our kind of next iteration. They have hired someone to come in from IB to talk about the career-related program that is happening, I think, this month. And so they're very interested in partnering with us and also with the other two districts, but because we're so close, we're kind of a natural fit. So I think through that process of looking at the career-related program, and I guess I feel pretty confident, given what I've heard from the person thus far, that they're pretty interested in pursuing that. Given everything that we're doing right now, we have to put that on the table as, yes, we're going to start that right now because we have all these other programs that we're working on. So I think at that time, as we look at rolling that out, we'll be looking at redundancies and looking at where can we maximize. And I think the Career Center is also looking at the programs that they have, and we'll be over the next couple of years figuring out what direction they want to go, what they want to offer, what they don't want to offer. I mean, just talking today about the building trades and the fact that there aren't enough people to hire right now. Potentially that's a place that could benefit kids in the area. Just as one.
Just from a physical plant point of view, the Career Center doesn't have a space that quite matches what we're developing here. And this will allow the instructor to simultaneously work with kids on computers and be able to look over and see kids working in the shop, or vice versa. Students will be able to get up from the computer with a design, go take their thumb drive and plug it into the CNC machine and watch it carve out what they just developed. So, pretty exciting stuff.
All right, how about a motion to approve the 3 lowest bidders on these projects?
I think the motion should have the amounts included in it.
Okay.
If you'd like, I have it written down.
All right, yeah. Would you like to make a motion, Marie?
I would move to approve the following bids: Wavy Roof Project with Lake Jenkins Paint Inc. for $41,000. Tree School Window Project to Millbrook Building and Remodeling for $59,250. And the NUHS Design Retrofit to Truman Group for $224,300.
Second.
Jim, seconds. Any further conversation? Questions? All right, all those in favor of awarding the bids as read, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right. So we'll get to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we've jumped around a bit here. I think, Harry, you are up. And again, please get up if you want to come and say.
It's a good time to get it.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be talking about PreK3 and PreK4. A lot more interesting. So we have 2 policies before us. One is on the distribution of non-school-sponsored literature in schools, and the other one is student freedom of expression in school-sponsored media. The first one, the non-school-sponsored literature, is really an update and expansion of our previous policy, which was short and very restrictive. And this one is still restrictive, but opens up the hope to satisfy the community in a good way. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I'd like to make a motion that we accept it and say that my dear colleagues, Mary and Hank and Chris may have some comments as well. I made a mistake this morning on reading it very, very closely, and I found a couple of little adjustments that I think I would like to make. Also, even if it will not change anything about the tone and the meaning. Using one word, I think, needs adjustment. For those of you who are rich hunters, there's misplaced that, which, so I just feel better if I did know. So, Mary, anything to add on the thing? Good job.
No, the only thing I wondered was, is that the classic legislative statement is always, but is not limited to, and there's at least one spot in here that I don't know whether that has any legal ramifications, I just know that it is a commonly used phrase in such situation.
Where is that?
Well, where I would suggest it is in, let's see, the 1, 2, 3 paragraph, 8 paragraph. Non-school sponsored literature. Second line from, no, excuse me, third line from the bottom. Non-school sponsored materials includes, but is not limited to, such things as.
So actually, it's been moved. How about a second?
Perfect.
Chris seconds. Further discussion. Is everybody okay with some of this wordsmithing we're doing right now? Without objection? Yep. I had one question, and I didn't read it that carefully, but do we limit this just to nonprofit? I didn't see the word nonprofit in there. Or, something that says that isn't for financial gain, and I didn't want to muck up the waters too much, and if you think it's fine.
Well, there was mention of
There
it can't be for solely marketing one's
Commercial nature.
good,
Okay.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
primarily of a commercial nature.
Right.
Certainly the intent
Yep.
and tone, I
Right.
think, says it's not about a business coming in and,
And ultimately, everything got to go through the superintendent, right?
yes.
Or designate.
Well, we discussed this right after we started discussing these types of things. And obviously, the superintendent has to be, it's much easier for them to say, whoever that person is, to say none, okay? Because then you don't have to make those value judgments, even if it's pretty clear that they're not whatever in here. But it did come up that there were things like rec park schedules, summer courses for whatever, that got everybody upset because they weren't having access to that type of material. So I would hope that superintendent is comfortable with this. At least I know it's not pure.
Yeah.
Meaning nothing goes out, so I don't have to ever make a judgment on it. But hopefully it'll limit it sufficiently so you don't spend your whole day looking at flyers.
Yeah, and I, just to add, like, kind of how we got to where we are, when I first got here, pretty much everything was going out that was submitted to or it felt like there was a lot of commercial, and sometimes under the guise of a nonprofit, commercial information going out to schools. And when families, and as a new parent, as well as superintendent here, I was getting at home tons and tons of flyers with school information wedged in there somewhere too. So there's in terms of our mission and supporting education, it's important to not be, because we're convenient for all the different organizations in town, for us to not become just a media conduit because it's easy and it doesn't cost people anything. So that's kind of was the, as we tried to figure out like changing the protocol in a way that made sense, we've tried a number of different things, and you can talk to Sharon. She's been working with me on this for 5 years now. So I think
Poor Sharon.
we are definitely supportive of this policy and feel that we've got a new protocol that goes along with this policy that will help to give everybody a really clear, to bring, Chip, as you were mentioning, to bring more clarity to it, as opposed to it being just a judgment call that someone would say, well, why did you let this one go, but not this one? We think we've arrived.
Okay, well, that's all I wanted to hear.
So your pet project can't go through and somebody else's?
Yeah. Or I know you, so I'm gonna let that
Yeah.
through, but I don't know someone else that.
All right, all those in favor of adopting policy E21, distribution of non-school sponsored literature in schools, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Thanks very much, that's been a long road. All right,
Yay.
next.
And the second one, I hope, is easier in as much as we are required to do it by the state legislature. VSBA saw this and this requirement, and they wrote it. So this is, it took me a while to get it, the student freedom of expression in school-sponsored media. In school-sponsored media. So once you get that, it's pretty easy to read, it's pretty straightforward, and I think easy to go. My colleagues, Cirque, Mary, anything to add?
No, I thought it was
You're good? Okay.
Just a historical note, there was a version of this at UD3.
Oh, there was?
Yeah.
I never saw that. You okay, Peg? Yeah. So we're good.
And this does speak to the fact that, when it was at UD3, it had to do with the student newspaper. But that has gone the way of most newspapers.
Yes.
But so this also speaks to websites, all that.
Yeah, all that.
Great.
All the stuff. Yeah.
So did you just move it, I hear?
I did move it.
All right, second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting policy C11, student freedom of expression in school-sponsored media, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? And that's two important pieces of policy we have adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let me just add, as part of our report, even though that's not on the list, but it's very short, is at our next meeting, we are going to be looking at board governance, all the issues, and if all goes well, we will bring it to you the following month.
Great.
So by, what is that, June, July? No, this is May. June. We hope to. Yay.
Feels like August.
Just because the sun is in.
No recess for us.
Where are we? We are at the FY18 quarterly financial report.
Okay. So Kathy finished up the quarterly report today and ran into some snags last week, which took her a little bit longer to unravel.
Can we blame Josh for that?
We might as well.
That's good.
Yeah. So this is, as you can see here, here's the summary, which obviously is a lot more accurate than the last one you got as we get near to the end of the fiscal year. Kathy outlined some of the changes in both revenue and expenditures. The state revenue, as you can see, we're expecting that down 195. The state ed funding down 300 is the clawback from the state for healthcare, which we obviously hadn't budgeted for. On the instruction side, there were some savings in health insurance, and we didn't rehire some positions going into this current year. So that is a surplus of 483. The real big change here is early retirement, option A. We had 5 people elect to take option A in early retirement this year, which is paid out in the current fiscal year. So it's not something you can budget for. So that's the $300,000 there. So we are, those of you that have been around for a number of cycles know that this number is pretty close to what we budgeted with the highs and lows, is a departure from the kinds of estimated fund balances that we've run in the past. And we knew that going into this fiscal year as we were more accurate about what we were budgeting, as opposed to keeping numbers kind of the same and building in security within those different areas.
But did we know what the clawback was gonna be?
We did not know.
All right, so, I mean, those are two big numbers there, okay?
Two big unknowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, half of them,
609.
600 something thousand.
Yep.
Dollars, so.
Missed those surpluses.
I know.
They're awfully nice to have.
Yeah, I know.
That is really, that's right on the line, $65,000.
Well, we're not there yet.
Right. Assuming it's only going to get better. All right. Any further questions on that? All right. So
I just have one question, I guess. When we're this close, do we make any adjustments in the final 3 months? We've done that in the past, when we knew we were going to be in bad way, and, I mean, way past.
Well, we have monies, we have ed reserve, which we can now draw from. We also have our contingency line here too.
Right.
So those are the two areas that if we were running a significant deficit, we can draw on those funds.
All right, moving along to number 6 on our agenda, town school planning. I asked Peter to toss this on. It's a result of a conversation that Chris and I had. So just a little history, and that is that UD3 and ID4 chairs used to meet with some select board members in Middlebury, called the town school meeting, as ACSD kind of came along and our view became much broader. That all kind of fell by the wayside. And then Chris just said, hey, we should get together with select board members from all the towns. And I just wanted to say this conversation happened, and we're gonna develop the plan a little bit further. Why don't you share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, part of it came out of the, I don't know what to call it anymore, the
master plan project.
Okay, still master plan. Yeah, sorry, Perry. But just that discussion and the fact that we are attempting to really look into the future and understand better where we are now and where we're going, and feeling like that type of conversation should take place with the towns, at least somewhat involved, and then knowing that this used to exist. It seems like maybe some form of a meeting that could be once or twice a year, could be quarterly, could be, I don't really know what it would look like, but something where there's representation from all the town select boards and some representation from this board as a, hey, this is what we're doing. We all are part of the same thing here. This is what we're doing about our kids and our sort of numbers and what we're thinking, and at least begin. That's why I thought that conversation should happen, and then beyond that, in the future, it just seems like it makes sense that those types of meetings would continue to happen. That's about as.
Yeah, as far as, to me, it seemed like just a good idea to have, kind of an official meeting to say, here's what we're up to, here's what we're thinking about, because these are people who talk to lots of people in town, and so that not everybody's out making stuff up. That we have a good understanding, and they have a good understanding that, we're not about to close schools, but we are having a very thoughtful planning process. Yes.
And, at previous Middlebury Town School meeting, especially at times of change, I think was really helpful. It was off and on. Lorraine was on it. Peter was on it. I was on it. Chris, you weren't a UB3 person on that, no. But it was helpful to get together and talk through issues that are facing both the town and the school in a way that keeps the conversation going in a kind of formal way.
It's pretty much traffic and taxes. That's what we talk mostly about.
Well, I was going to say, taxes were always, because there is that clash, if you want to call it, where the town meeting gets up and says 20% of this budget is town and 80% education, or whatever it is. And there's always this angst between it, and I think one has to constantly be working it. So any communication, I think, is good.
Yeah. Okay?
I was on the Board of Selectmen when that committee started, back in the dark ages, and that was the impetus for it. It was taxes,
Right.
because we were sitting on the Board of Selectmen, and we had a very, very tight budget, and things looked really good, and then bam, explosion. And so I think that there's always going to be that push and pull between what you're struggling to do as a selectman in the town and knowing the many needs of the town, and you squeeze it as far as you can, and then all of a sudden somebody steps on you, the giant steps in. So I would certainly, how you do it is hard because each of these boards of selectmen has its own ethos. And so I think some thought, it's not just kind of let's have a meeting. It's, I think, a considerable amount of thought ought to go into it as to, and maybe talking on an individual basis with select persons to see how this could work best. But I think it's an excellent idea.
So we'll sort of continue to develop it. That's as far as we're
Coming from both sides, though, too.
What's that?
Yes.
Them to us and us to them.
Yes.
Or the school board, because
Well, we're still a new entity that not everybody understands, and I think it's really...
And the funding relative to the statewide component of it, compared to those years,
Yeah,
is totally
it is
different
different.
too. So there's so many more unknowns for us that we don't control, just like the town couldn't control what we're going to do.
Right.
I support it 100% because I think it's a courtesy.
Yeah.
And that we all know that we're going in the same direction. We don't need the school going this way and the town going that way. We've got to stay together. So I 100% support something like that.
Since everybody seems very positive, I'll just say it was Chris's idea.
I like it, Chris.
And on that note, I would just add that I had breakfast the other day. The chair of the Addison Northwest Unified Board said, hey, why don't us chairs get together and start talking about, what we might have in common, what we might be able to do in the future. So Sue Rakowski, who's Addison Northwest, and Don Griswold from the Mount Abe District, and I had breakfast the other day. And, really just sort of talked about some of the issues we were facing as a district. And of course, it's all centered on declining enrollment, some of the distractions we have. Addison Northwest is looking for a superintendent. Addison Northeast is still struggling with the Mount Abe bond. And we're in the midst of implementing IB. So we all have our own distractions as well. But anyway, it was very nice, and it did somewhat spiral into a board chair support group more than anything else. But anyway, we're going to just sort of keep meeting and talking informally.
I'm glad you have somewhere to turn.
Yes. Oh, really? You have one of those people too on your board? It was nice for us, but I think if we just build a relationship, and we're going to probably start focusing more on the things that we actually literally share, which is like a pre-K coordinator. We're going to hopefully get Jason LaRock, who's the chair of the Career Center, to join us. And those are the kind of two things that we are interconnected on. But if anybody's out there saying, oh, those 3 school districts are already joining this, because there's been some higher level emails from some of my colleagues in the legislature making it look like we are about to merge. Woo. We're just having breakfast. All right. And I've asked Peter to just give us an update. The task force on racism, bias, and discrimination, the report was due in May, where it's now May. So how about an update?
Sure. So the task force has been meeting consistently since they were formed. The development has been really, really strong. A lot of deep conversations, kind of running the gamut, looking at all aspects of the community, schools, where we are, where we need to go, taking into account, I think, both what's happening on the national stage, the kinds of education that we're engaged in, really looking through the lens of IB, which, as I think we've talked about before, international mindedness is at the core of IB. Living in a pretty insular community in rural Vermont, it's sometimes hard to have these conversations in a genuine way. So I think they've been discussing and talking about that deeply. They were not prepared to present their recommendations in May. They said they could have done it if absolutely necessary, and I said I thought the board would appreciate them taking the time they needed to do it and do it right, especially because a lot of what they're doing is really for us planning for the future, and a difference of a month would make a big difference. So they have requested June 18th as the date that they would be done to come to the board. So that would be our third Monday, which I think probably would be a good date to do that.
Yep. All right, thanks.
And we are, just to add to that, we are administrators on June 22nd, have a training with Rebecca Haslam. She's a consultant right now. She did work for Burlington School District and was an equity leader there. She's done many trainings throughout Vermont. Really great woman. She came and talked with the task force a few months ago and talked about the work that she does, and they made a really good connection with her. So she's coming to train our administrators for a half day on that day.
Peter, what is the training about?
Equity literacy.
Adversity? Diversity?
Equity
That's another,
literacy.
Yeah, equity literacy is what I said, but you could call it a lot of different things.
Sorry, like we were talking about the diversity thing, okay.
Just for administrators to start, yeah.
All right, with that, how about a motion to go into executive session under VSA Title I, Section 313, paren 1, paren A, which I will translate as a personnel matter, which is, in fact, the superintendent's evaluation. So how about a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. I'll give it to Chris. He was next to me. Victoria gets to be the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? While the camera breaks down, please help yourself to some food, use the bathroom, and then we'll settle right in.